So I tried making this video like 5 times now as a short, but realized it was too much to put into a short and there was more context to it, and I wanted to explain myself a little more, tell some stories. And then I made a video, a longer video. It was like 10 minutes long. And I went inside and told my wife how I need to make sure this awkward time in my middle son's life, he's 11 years old, awkward time for boys. And I told her how I was like, I really want to get him into shooting more, get him into maybe competition shooting, and just spend more time with him and be his best friend through this crucial time in his life. And she rightfully pointed out how I was going through a really rough time in my addiction and trying to get sober when my oldest son was at his awkward stage and, is this crucial point of his life. He was around maybe 11 years old, about the same age my son is now, when the rough part of my addiction really was taking place. And he lost all trust in me. It was a really hard time for him, and I wasn't there. And she's right. He had to deal with all that alone. And even once I had gotten sober, he was still just didn't have trust in me. And, it takes a long time to earn that back. And that video, I completely overlooked that aspect of it. So I'm making it again, and we're going to talk more about it. And I'm going to talk a little bit about what kind of brought this on and maybe a couple of stories. So buckle up. When boys are going through puberty, and coming into their own, I guess you can say, especially when there's older kids around, it's hard for them. They want to be cool, they want to fit in, they want to impress the older kids. Now, I went through this, I really struggled with this because I was raised up basically by Gen X. The majority of the people that lived around me were all a few years older than me. My cousin, who I was really close with, she was older than me. She's a few years older than me. And I always wanted to be the cool kid and wanted to fit in. So it, for one, taught me a lot. I definitely made me tough because I was constantly having to deal with being tested by the older boys and stuff like that. And but it made me grow up too quick, right? I got into smoking cigarettes and smoking pot and drinking at a really early age because all the older kids around me were doing it. When I was in middle school, or even when I was in elementary school, all the older kids, they were all in middle school, and then eventually they were all in high school when I was in middle school. So we all know how that goes. Kids start, experimenting with things and getting into their parents' liquor cabinets. At least when I grew up, that's how it was. And it, like I said, it was good and bad. It was good because it, taught me a lot, and I didn't grow up as one of these super soft millennials. I grew up with Gen X, who was a bunch of savages. So I'm, late, or older millennial, I guess you can say, where I still got a little bit of that Gen Z in me, or Gen X, sorry. Um, but it got me into a lot of trouble early on, because I wanted to be the cool kid and I wanted to impress all the older kids and stuff like that. Now, what really prompted this conversation, and I've talked about some of this stuff in other videos, but my middle son, who's 11, is kind of going through the same thing, where a lot of the kids in the neighborhood, who are his closest friends, that, far as accessibility goes, outside of school or baseball, it's the neighborhood kids, and that's who you usually pal around with the most, are the neighborhood kids. And they're all older than him. He's still in elementary school and they're all in middle school. And his personality is much like me. He likes to peacock and show off and try to impress everyone and kind of be outrageous and over the top. And all the older kids are all in middle school, and their priorities are changing, with wanting to look good and dress good and impress girls and stuff like that. And he, the other night I catch him at like 10 o'clock at night in the bathroom doing his hair and stuff. I'm like, why are you doing your hair? Like, since when did you start caring about these things? And it's just, it's just part of it. And, another byproduct, or another aspect of this, I should say, is the older kids they're gonna pick on you. They're gonna pick on the weak. They're gonna test you. And the kids that were bullied before you are now gonna bully you, right? And that's what happened the other day. The other day, I'm not really understand how these video games work, but I know you can like buy things and trade things with one another and stuff like that. And our son comes out from his room in tears, saying that one of the neighborhood kids who he was on the game playing with had taken some stuff from him, some stuff that he really liked, some stuff apparently that was expensive. And he was upset. He was really upset. And the kid wouldn't give it back. He then blocked him, and then, blocked him from calling him. And apparently he pulls this crap all the time, my son said. And, eventually he'll either give it back or, unblock him or whatever. And they're just testing him. They're picking on him. Now, this kid was also picked on, or is also picked on. He's a little overweight, chubby, and I think a lot of the kids razz him about that. Just how boys are, unfortunately. And, we offered to help him get those things back. I was like, hey, I can call him, or I can go over there and talk to his parents and let them know what's going on. And, of course, he doesn't want that either, right? He doesn't want to look weak. He doesn't want to look like he needs his parents to come and defend him when he's getting bullied or getting picked on. And it's hard. And I just told him, I was like, hey man, whenever you're ready, if it ever you want those things back bad enough, I will address it for you. And that's when I told my wife that this is that awkward time in life that he really needs a best friend that he can trust no matter what. And I'll be that best friend. I'm not going to bully him, and I'm not going to pick on him, and I got nothing to prove to him. He needs dad right now, He needs dad to help him, to guide him through this time and teach him. And, I wasn't there for my older son during this time. There was, early in my addiction, I was still like what you would call a functional addict. I was still getting up every day and taking my son to school, going to work all day, getting off work, coming home, coaching soccer, And then eventually it becomes unmanageable and your life starts falling apart. And when my son was coming into this time in his life is when my life was falling apart. I got arrested. I went to rehab. And I wasn't there for him. And that sucks. That sucks that he had to go through that. And he had a lot of anger and a lot of resentment. He didn't trust me, rightfully so. You know, boys always have a stronger attachment, I would say, to their mom, which, you know, he leaned on a lot to his mom, and he still does. He won't call me for a lot of things because he's probably not going to like the answer, and it doesn't help that, you know, I'm a hard ass. You know, I'm a ball buster, and he didn't need that. He needed a dad. And that's what my middle son needs right now. He needs his dad. And he needs somebody, like I said, that he can trust and lean on during this awkward time in life. You know, and, you know, back to, you know, those kids taking, or that kid taking those things from him. You know, I can remember a time when I was younger. I had this really cool Gerber pocket knife. You know, I was an outdoorsy kind of kid, so I had a Gerber pocket knife, and there was the, you know, SA kids that lived down the street that I used to pal around with, and I was down there hanging out one day, and they took it from me, and I was devastated. I wanted it back, so I did ask my dad. My dad went down there, and of course the kids were like, "We don't know what he's talking about. We don't have it," and their parents weren't paying attention to them. And just that being vulnerable and being weak like that, to where the kids, you know, would pick on you like that, eventually I got to a point where I was no longer afraid of these kids. You know, especially when we got into high school, a lot of the kids that used to pick on me and tease on me when we were younger, I ended up standing up to, getting in a lot of fights, winning a lot of fights. There was a guy that I really looked up to for a long time. He was a few years older than me. And, you know, once I got to that, you know, teenager, you know, 18-year-old age, I remember I went over to his house for a party. There was a bunch of his friends there, and one of his friends had jumped in the fire, and a bunch of coals had gotten on me and burned some holes in some new clothes I had on. And I got pissed. What? You know, talking crap to his buddy. Then my friend, who I grew up with, who I thought I could trust, smacks me in the head, across the face. Boom. And I was like, "That's it, Stevie. Let's take this out front." And I beat the brakes off this dude to the point where I was on top of him, and the last punch I held back, and I was like, you know, you used to be my friend, dude. Threw him to the ground, pushed his head back, and got up and left. Went home and cleaned up my face because I got banged up a little bit. Cleaned up my face and went back to fight the guy who burned the holes in my shirt. But by that point, other people had gotten involved, and that was the end of it. But I just need to be more present, and just I need to be more understanding, and I need to stop being such a ball buster and hard ass with him, and be more of his friend. You know, I recently have gotten pretty into, you know, firearms and shooting, and that'd be a great hobby for him to get into with me. Maybe get into some, you know, youth competitions, go skeet shooting and some pistol shooting. He shoots archery with me, so that's another good outlet for him. And get him back into jiu-jitsu. You know, when we were back in California, he trained jiu-jitsu really strong. And then when we moved to Texas, he turned into a cowboy and started riding rodeo and or not riding rodeo, but doing like the mutton busting and stuff, and didn't want to go back to jujitsu. But now he's at a point where he's always jumping on me on the couch and wanting to wrestle and trying to choke me and stuff like that. And boys, they need that. They need that aggression, rough and tumble play. They need to get that energy out, especially, once they start going through puberty and testosterone and stuff like that. They need to get that aggression out. So I'll probably get him back into jiu-jitsu. I need to get my butt back on the mats. I haven't been on the mats in quite some time now. So I need to get back to training like I was and, learn from my mistakes and become a better father than I was, to my older boy, because I have a lot of regrets about it now, and it's hard. And we have kind of a strained relationship, it's getting better. Obviously, he's an adult now, and he's living on his own, so we can have like more adult conversations and stuff. But it was hard for a long time, and it's hard to lose trust like that with your kids, and then try to parent them, because they're like, "Who the hell are you? You weren't there when X, Y, and Z happened," and they lean on mom, and mom tries to say baby or just pity them to where she's kind of a pushover, I guess you could say, and just tries to do things to fill that void and that loss of connection that boys need with their father. So yeah, that's why this didn't fit in a 3-minute short, was because it's a hard topic. It's a tough topic, but it's something that needs to be talked about. Boys need their dads, for sure, and they need you to be a dad, and they need you to be a best friend, and they need you to be a role model. So I have much to learn and much to change, but I hope I have a 11-year-old and like an 18-month-old, so I get 2 more cracks at it, and hopefully I get it right one of these times. Fortunately, my older son, he ended up pretty good. I don't want to say because of me. Can't really say because of me. But he's a good kid. He's a good guy. He respectful, working hard, living on his own. Yeah, that's what I have to say about that. Till next time.